Every fragrance has a notes list. Top notes, heart notes, base notes. You've seen them 100 times on Fragrantica or a brand's website. And most people either buy blind based on that list, or they ignore it completely because it never matched what the fragrance actually smelled like anyway. Both are the same mistake. They come from the same misunderstanding about what fragrance notes actually are. I remember buying Creed Aventus expecting to smell pineapple. It's right there on the notes list. Pineapple, blackcurrant, birch, oak moss. So you'd expect something fruity, maybe sweet. What you actually get is citrus, woods, smoke, with something fruity sitting way in the background. The pineapple is there, but it's not doing what the word pineapple makes you think it's going to do. And that gap between what the notes suggest and what you actually smell, that's exactly what this video is about. Here's what's actually happening. Every fragrance has 3 layers. Top notes are what you smell the moment you spray. Citrus, light herbs, something fresh and sharp. These are lighter molecules that evaporate fast, within about 15 to 20 minutes. They're the opening act, not the fragrance itself. One of the biggest mistakes people make is deciding whether they like a fragrance in the first 5 minutes. Heart notes, also called middle notes, come next, once the top settles. Florals, spices, soft fruits. This is the fragrance's actual character, the thing it's really about. These last a few hours. When you catch a fragrance on someone and think, oh, that actually smells really nice, you're probably smelling the heart. Base notes are what's left. Woods, musks, amber, vanilla, oud. The heaviest molecules, the slowest to leave. On skin, these last 8 to 12 hours. On fabric, sometimes longer. Spray something on your jacket sleeve and you'll still catch it the next morning. And these layers don't switch instantly. They overlap and blend. The top is fading while the heart is building, which is why the first 5 minutes tells you almost nothing useful about what you're actually buying. Here's the correction most guides get wrong. The notes to pay closest attention to are the heart and base, not just the base. The heart is the fragrance's personality, what you'll smell for most of the day. The base is the foundation and the longevity. Both matter. The top gets all the attention. The heart and base are what you're actually buying. Knowing the 3 layers is useful, but here's where things get a little more confusing. Notes don't describe ingredients the way most people think they do. They describe smells. In most modern fragrances, the bergamot on a notes list isn't necessarily bergamot extract. It's often a synthetic molecule designed to smell bergamot-like in this specific formula. Some fragrances do use natural ingredients, real rose, real oud, real sandalwood, usually in the more expensive bottles, but even then, the notes list only tells you the category of smell, not the full experience. That's why 2 fragrances with almost identical notes lists can smell completely different. Same notes, different perfumer, different concentrations, different interactions, completely different result. The Aventus example from earlier is exactly this. Pineapple is on the list, but if you smelled it blind, pineapple probably isn't the first thing you'd say. So these days, I treat notes like a rough map. Useful? Absolutely. Accurate? Not always. They're great for ruling out families you already know you don't enjoy. They're much less reliable for predicting exactly what a fragrance will smell like. And that's before we even get into the fact that the same fragrance can smell slightly different from person to person. This is where skin chemistry comes in, because this matters. The same fragrance can behave slightly differently from person to person. Skin pH, body temperature, and natural oils all affect how a fragrance develops after you spray it. Not dramatically, a warm woody fragrance isn't suddenly going to smell like citrus on you, but the same fragrance might pull more sweetness on one person and more dryness on another. Someone else's skin might bring out the sandalwood, while yours pushes the musk forward. Same bottle, same notes, slightly different story. Which is also why spray strips in stores are nearly useless. Paper has no chemistry, no temperature, nothing. If I'm testing something, I want it on skin and I want to give it time. 20 minutes minimum before I decide anything. Okay, so now let's talk about note families, because this is where notes actually become useful. And honestly, most fragrance education stops before it gets to this part. Think in families, not individual notes. Citrus family, bergamot, lemon, grapefruit, orange. These aren't just smells, they're a mood, freshness, energy, approachability. Bergamot is the backbone of cologne since the 1700s. Lemon is sharpest, grapefruit most masculine. If a fragrance opens bright and immediately likable, you're in this family. Woody and earthy family. This is where fragrances start smelling expensive. Vetiver is dry, smoky, sophisticated. When a fragrance smells like it has its life together, vetiver is often involved. Sandalwood is creamy. Cedar is clean and structured. Floral family. Most men think floral means women's fragrance. That's wrong. In men's perfumery, florals add depth without adding sweetness. Iris is one of the best examples. Cool, powdery, refined. If a fragrance has that quiet luxury quality that's hard to describe, iris is often hiding somewhere in the background. Oriental and warm family. Amber, vanilla, oud, resins. This is where warmth comes from. Oud forms inside specific trees through a natural process, and some varieties can cost more than a luxury car per kilogram. Dark, smoky, leathery. Some people smell oud and think wealth. Others think burning hospital. Both reactions are surprisingly common. Now, some of these ingredients have origins you genuinely wouldn't expect. Ambergris, that warm, sweet marine quality found in many classic fragrances, came from sperm whale vomit. Today, it's usually replaced by ambroxan, which is responsible for that clean, expensive feeling in fragrances like Sauvage. Civet, the warmth and depth in vintage Chanel No. 5 and YSL Kouros, a small mammal's scent gland. Smells horrific undiluted, incredible diluted. Now synthetic. Castoreum, leathery depth from beaver glands. Still approved as a food flavoring for vanilla and raspberry in some countries. You're welcome for that. The point isn't that fragrance is disgusting. It's that some of the most beautiful smells ever found came from the last places you'd look. Modern chemistry recreates all of it, meaning the bottle on your shelf exists because someone figured out how to copy nature. Now you know the families. Here's how to actually use them. If you're in a store, spray on skin and go do literally anything else for 20 to 30 minutes. Walk around, grab a coffee, come back later. What you're smelling at that point is mostly the heart, and that's what you'll be living with for most of the day. That's what you should be judging. If you're buying online, the notes list is really your only tool. Check the heart and base families before you commit. Is the heart in a family you usually enjoy? Is the base? If both look right, it's probably a reasonable risk, although in-store is always better. But knowing the families means online isn't a complete gamble anymore. Either way, trust your nose over the list. Those two things are often very different. And with that, fragrance is officially more complicated than you thought. And that's a good thing, because now you actually know what you're buying. Subscribe if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, and the summer fragrance guide is right there on screen. Good next watch if you want to actually use what we just covered.